Welcome to the GetRealWealth.com radio show, where wealth means a lot more than just building a second stream of income. Listen and learn how 70% of the millionaires in America used real estate to create a lifestyle that most people only dream about. A lifestyle that includes good health, family, romance, travel, charity, and all the other parts of a balanced life. Now, here is your host, real estate investor and mentor, Steve Davis.
Good afternoon and welcome to the GetRealWealth.com radio show. I am your host, Steve Davis, and as always, we're here talking about how to use real estate to build a life worth living by purchasing real estate that produces cash flow, as well as all the other ways that it makes you money: equity buildup, equity capture, appreciation, and then, of course, the tax advantage. We're going to talk a little bit about, actually a lot about one of the sides of the tax advantage of owning and keeping real estate. And that keeping is a very important point, because I don't think there's a person out there that's over 45 or so that has owned a home and sold it and then looked back at that home and said, holy Toledo, that thing doubled in value. I never should have sold it. Everybody has the same story. And here's how you solve that. Never ever sell a piece of real estate except to buy more real estate, a bigger piece of real estate. And we're going to talk about how to do that tax-free or tax-deferred, deferred till after you're dead, in a moment. I do have two urgent emails that people are listening, and they wanted me to answer these very quickly. So I'm going to do this right at the beginning of the show. The first one is about earnest money. And there's some, I'm going to call him a clown, because I don't know who it is. There's some clown going around giving away a free workshop on real estate investing and telling people to put up zero earnest money or $1. $1 earnest money. Nothing will destroy your credibility faster than doing something dumb like that. What the least that I ever put up is $5,000, unless there's certain circumstances where I'll throw $1,000 at it just to get control of the property if they're willing to do it. But where people get this idea is from the fact that I talk about putting zero earnest money down, but you've got to understand, it's with the promise that I'm going to put $5,000 earnest money down in 5 days. In other words, I told the people up front that I didn't have money. This is going back 30 years ago when I had bad credit and no money, and I was first getting into the real estate field, and I was just a wholesaler. I told them, I said, look, I've got to be honest with you. I don't have any money. I don't have any credit. I'm not closing this deal. But I have investors, a list of 40 of them, that know me by name. I know what they're looking for. I know what they want. If you'll give me the control of the property for 5 days, I'll get you the $5,000 earnest money. And oh, by the way, you're taking zero risk to do that. You can take a backup contract 5 minutes after I leave the room if you want to. I do not care. So the seller is taking absolutely zero risk to do this, and I get control of the property for the 5 days to go present it to my buyers. And generally I showed up within 24 or 48 hours. Seldom did it take more than that. When you're dealing with competent investors, they don't play. When they see a good deal, they move on it, generally within 5 to 10 minutes. Now, I brag that I move on a deal within 5 minutes. Some people take twice as long, 10 minutes. But that's as long as it takes if you know what you're doing. Now, is this going to be a rule when you're new at this? No. But once you've done 3 or 4 deals, 5 minutes is all it takes. And you get control of that property and move on. So, in answer to the question, nothing destroys your credibility faster than making a $1 earnest money offer. It's ridiculous. The only time I do 1,000, you ask me when I do 1,000, is when I've looked at 4 houses and I want them all. And I'm writing 4 checks at the same time. Occasionally, and I've got a super motivated buyer. Seller. Super motivated. They're begging me to write an offer. Then, of course, I'm going to shoot for the lowest earnest money possible. But in 90+% of the deals where I've just got a normal motivated seller, I'm going to give them some real earnest money, $5,000, sometimes more, because I'm real. Who cares if you put up earnest money? If the deal doesn't go through, or you find something wrong with the deal, you've got 5 to 7 days to back out and get your earnest money back. There's really very, very little, if any, risk in that situation. So don't destroy your credibility by watching some guru on late night TV selling books and CDs telling you that you can do 0 earnest money or $1 earnest money. That just destroys your credibility, makes you look like a fool. Let it go. Do not do it. Again, 1,000 is pretty much minimum, and that's rare. 5,000 is pretty consistent for the price homes we're doing, by the way. Don't put $5,000 down on a $500,000 home that you're flipping. You might want to put a little more than that. But on these $150,000 to $220,000 homes that we're buying for rental, yeah, $5,000 is plenty. But again, it's not at risk. You've got 5 to 7 days to back out of the property, back out of the deal, and get your earnest money back. Okay, the next question is from someone who says they're a big fan of mine, and I appreciate the kind words. This is from Hind, I think is how you say this. She says the reason, she has 2 questions. They make enough money to pay, but they don't. I had to serve them 2 weeks ago, and they ended up paying. They always pay the late fee. What are my options with them? You need to put the pressure on them that they need to pay on the first and rent is late on the second. This really comes down to when you leased the property, it sounds like you didn't lease it properly, meaning you didn't go through line by line the lease with them and explain to them that your mortgage is due on the first, you pay it on the first, therefore you need the rent on the first, and then make them initial that part of the lease. That's the only thing you can do, because the late fees are obviously not a threat to this family. They don't mind paying the late fees, and they've done it 2 months in a row. So there's not much you have in the way of leverage to get them to do it, other than to stress to them, look, rent is due on the first, late on the second, my mortgage is due on the first, I need that rent on the first, and appeal to that. But if they're willing to pay the late fees over and over again, hey, extra cash flow, whatever. All right, when we come back, I'm going to introduce you to a professional that knows how to save you massive amounts of taxes on your capital gains. This is the GetRealWealth.com radio show. I'm your host, Steve Davis. Thanks for listening. Did you know that 70% of the millionaires in America used real estate as their main investment vehicle? You can and should have some real estate in your portfolio. This is Steve Davis, host of the GetRealWealth.com radio show. Starting with bad credit and no money at age 27, I began investing in real estate. By 30, I was retired. I will be explaining this at a free 2-hour introductory workshop this month. If you would like to attend, go to GetRealWealth.com. That's GetRealWealth.com. Thank you for listening. Welcome back to the GetRealWealth.com radio show. I'm your host, Steve Davis. As always, we're here talking about using real estate to build wealth. And in this case, we're going to talk about how we keep our wealth with a thing called a 1031 exchange. Now, the company representative is Cindy Pham, and she is a highly intelligent, well-educated, hardworking. She's just a good person to have on your team. She works for Asset Preservation Incorporated. You can find them at apiexchange.com. apiexchange.com. Cindy, I want to thank you for calling in. How are you today?
Hi. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on your radio show.
Well, I'm excited to have you. Let's first talk about your company a little bit. Tell me how long you all have been in business. How many of these things do you do a year? Give the listener a little picture of the credibility of dealing with your company.
So our company, Asset Preservation, has been around since 1990. So we're one of the first qualified intermediaries that existed. And so we've been in existence since 1990, and Stewart Title bought our company in 1993. So now we are a subsidiary of Stewart Title. So Stewart Title is our parent company.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've closed many deals with them.
Yeah.
And then how many of these do you do a year?
Gosh, well, I don't know the exact amount because we're nationwide, so I don't have the exact number, but we've done over 180,000 exchanges.
That's the number I was looking for.
Yeah.
That's credibility and experience. And what I want, let me define it my way, then you correct me with your way of defining it. I look at it like this. If I go out and I buy an apartment complex and I raise the value $3 or $4 million, and then I sell it and I make $3 or $4 million, I can keep that $3 or $4 million, 100% of it, by going and buying a building that costs $1 more than the one I just sold. And that allows me to increase my cash flow dramatically and pay no taxes now on that $3 or $4 million. Is that a pretty good explanation?
It's pretty good. So essentially, the 1031 exchange, it comes from the tax code, Internal Revenue Code, Section 1031. It allows the investor to defer their capital gain taxes when you reinvest your property into another. When you sell your investment property and reinvest it into another property. So the tax code is all about promoting business, right? So IRS goes, if you take your money out, yeah, you're going to have to pay taxes. But if you take the money and you reinvest it, that's promoting the economy. So if you reinvest this money, we're not going to tax you right now until you take money out.
And the nice thing is if you know how to do this and you do it correctly, you can defer it till after you're dead and then teach your kids how to defer it till after they're dead, and so on and so on. Correct.
So that is, when I say there's why you want to do a 1031 exchange. One, the obvious reason is that you're deferring your taxes because who wants to pay the taxes, right?
Correct.
But it's more buying power. Why pay the taxes when you can roll that amount into the next property? So it's more buying power. And also, it's the third reason I want to say that it's potentially a permanent deferral because you can always continue to reinvest and defer all those taxes. And so when you pass away, your heir inherits the property and they get a full step-up in basis. And then all the taxes that you owed from property C that you just sold or you owned, and then property B that you sold or property A, all the capital gain taxes that followed it goes away and vanishes.
Wow. That's amazing. It's a great tool for legacy because a lot of the listeners of this show, Cindy, are thinking about that. We're trying to make ourselves financially independent and pass those techniques and rules and strategies down to our kids so that our kids also are financially independent. So that is a super powerful tool.
It is an amazing tool for investors.
Well, tell me a little bit about a thing called a reverse 1031. What is the difference? What does that actually mean?
Okay, so I'm going to start with the delayed exchange, which is the most common exchange that investors normally do. That's going to be when you sell your investment property and you replace it with a different property. So you sell first. Now the reverse, that is when you find another property that you want to buy, but you haven't sold your property yet. So you're going to buy the replacement property first, and then you sell your relinquished property. So that's the backwards. So with those, we do those under parking arrangements. We actually have to park title because IRS doesn't allow you to own two properties at once in exchange. So we actually go and it's a little bit more complicated, but it's done quite a bit as well. We come in, we create an LLC, we buy that property for you, and then you have 180 days to sell your relinquished property.
Okay. So, and then the money from the sale of your property, how does that get back into the first deal? Because you just described it. You haven't even closed it, really. Correct.
So you have to, it's not done as often because you have to have the cash already available, or you have to have your financing already available for that.
Does the seller have to agree to anything, or do they get their money and move on down the road?
So the seller of which property?
The one that you're upgrading to.
Your replaced property? No, for them, you're just buying another property.
So they get all their money. They move down the road.
Yeah, they move
and
down
you're waiting to
road.
Close on yours and
so
do the reverse.
You have your replacement property owned through an LLC that we hold title to, and then you have 180 days to sell your relinquished property. And so let's say if you are not able to sell your relinquished property, you kind of just end up with another property. But if you are able to sell your relinquished property in that 180 days, then you can defer the taxes from your relinquished property.
Wow, that's excellent. I'm only familiar with the phrase because a student of mine at my old company had done one, and they tried to explain it to me, and when they explained it to me, it was very confusing, but the way you explained it was very easy to understand.
There is another exchange. It's called the improvement exchange, and that's for build-to-suits or major renovations. So
now, what did you call it?
An improvement exchange.
Improvement exchange, okay.
Correct. So you're making an improvement for the property. So let's say you're going to sell your relinquished property. It's in the exchange, and you buy a piece of land. Let's say your exchange, we're holding, let's say, $1 million in the exchange for you, and you buy a piece of land for about $400,000, and you're going to identify. So $400,000 in the exchanges used to purchase your land. Now we're still holding about $600,000. You've identified that you're going to build let's say a multifamily unit there. That's going to cost you about $700,000. So the funds from the exchange is going to be, we're going to create a construction loan basically, and we're going to basically fund the vendors as we're building the multifamily unit. Now you've got to finish using those proceeds within the 180 days. You still have to have 180 days in the exchange period to do that.
Does the construction have to be completed in that 180 days?
Like a handover, CO, no. It's just the work that the vendors have done needs to be completed. So you're going to say, hey, the foundation is going to cost this much, the soft cost is going to be this much, and then maybe the plumbing, and that kind of hits the amount of your proceeds. As long as those proceeds that work is done and that gets paid for, then you have to do that within 180 days. You don't have to complete the building, but the proceeds...
The portion that is part of the exchange has to be finished.
Correct.
Wow, that's interesting. I've never heard of that. Okay, this is the way to get a hold of Cindy. Go ahead and give them your email address. Before you do, Cindy, everyone that's listening to this that doesn't have a lot of experience with real estate investing, this may seem confusing to you, or it may seem overwhelming. Don't let it be. If you've got some property with a huge amount of equity in it, a couple $100,000 or more, you really should talk to Cindy before you sell that, so that you have at least tried to do that in a tax-free environment. So how do they get a hold of you, Cindy?
Yes, I'd love to be a resource, and feel free to reach out to me with an email or a call. My email is Cindy, CINDY, at API Exchange, and that's spelled out as the word, EXCHANGE.com. So Cindy, CINDY, at APIExchange.com.
And then what's your phone number?
My phone number is an easy number to remember. It's a toll-free number. It's 833-331-1031.
That's a good number.
Yeah.
Okay.
Done on purpose, but I'm local here in the Houston area, so I'm in Texas.
Okay.
So again, that's 833-331-1031.
Okay, Cindy. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the air today. Thank you so much for calling in.
I appreciate you for having me on. Thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we're headed to break. When we come back, I'll finish answering a question. I just realized there were a couple more questions from that last email that I did not address, so I'll address those when we come back from the break here on the GetRealWealth.com radio show. I'm your host, Steve Davis. You're listening to AM 700, the voice of Texas. Thanks for listening. 70% of the millionaires in America used real estate as their main investment vehicle. Listen to the GetRealWealth.com radio show to find out how you can do it too. Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. right here on AM 700 KSEV, the voice of Texas. Welcome back to the GetRealWealth.com radio show. I'm your host, Steve Davis. We are answering emails from listeners, and I tried to knock two out at the beginning of the show, but I missed a couple of questions. And these are difficult questions because it's hard to beat up a particular type of real estate that I don't really care for when I know that people are using that vehicle to succeed. In other words, you can hear me rant and rave and say that it doesn't work, which I'm not going to say. I can say it's harder to work than another category. But I know people who are using them effectively. And what am I talking about? Plexes, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes. I don't like them. They're harder to lease. The clientele is a little bit rougher as a rule. And so I really don't care for them. I don't buy them. I've had a lot of them in the past. I was involved in a deal with 44 fourplexes, something like that. And it was I just noted after a while that it was more than twice as much work to deal with these plexes than it was to deal with single family. I also noticed that the plexes took longer to lease. Where I was leasing the single family in a week, it took me 2 weeks or more to lease a duplex, triplex, or fourplex unit. And here's the problem. The reason this is coming up is because a lady told me yesterday, I believe it was, that she's gone 2 months and can't lease this duplex. That's ludicrous. There's only 3 reasons a place won't sell. Lease, I should say. 1, you did a crummy rehab, and it's really a piece of crap, and nobody wants to live there. 2, you got greedy and overpriced it. And 3, you are not a very good salesperson. I thought number 3 is a lot harder to solve than number 1 and 2. But I have a hour-long class for my students that I really require all of them to take that teaches the basics of sales, asking for the sale, when to ask for the sale, when not to ask for the sale, how to ask for the sale, how to close them, how to get the money. It takes some skill to do that. But the first thing that you want to check is your house perfect? Or are there nicks and scratches all over the place? Is the carpet coming up in one corner? Do you have a door that's only got 2 hinges and one of the hinges is missing? Just dumb little things like that can cost you a sale. You've got to remember that everything matters in a rent property. I tell the story in different situations, but if the most beautiful girl in the world puts on a wedding dress, and she is voluptuous, just drop dead gorgeous, and she steps out, and there's a black ink spot in the lower right-hand corner of the dress, what is the first thing that you see? The black ink spot. See, we evolved to notice the tiger in the grass. We evolved to notice anything that's not supposed to be there. If we didn't, we'd be dead. We would have gotten eaten by the tiger because we didn't see that there was something slightly different in the grass. You are naturally attracted to anything that's odd or out of place. It's a safety mechanism. It's the same when a tenant or prospective tenant walks into your unit. If you don't have that place all but perfect, the first thing they're going to notice is the missing knob on the stove, the missing handle to the bathroom, the missing toilet paper roll, the scratches, the crayon marks, the dirt on the, what do you call that, shoe rail, not shoe rail, but the trim at the bottom of the, man, I'm having trouble thinking of the name. The trim at the bottom of all the walls. They notice that first, and then they collect it. It's collected in their mind as they go through the unit. By the time they go through the unit, if you've got 10 things wrong, they've already memorized those 10 things, and they're going, I'm not going to lease this place. Because if they can't even solve those 10 little problems, and see what I mean by the little things matter? Because they're saying if they can't handle the little things, how are they going to handle the big things? When I have an AC problem, I have a commode explode or something like that, they know you're not going to be able to handle it because you can't handle those little things. So it's not going to lease. That's easy to check. Go make sure your unit is all but perfect. And then the next thing is, did you get greedy? Your unit is perfect. And so you thought it was a good idea to put your property on the market at the highest rent in the neighborhood, or $25 more, because you got greedy and arrogant. You think your property's better than everybody else's, and it's blah, blah, blah. So you overpriced it and lost 2 months of rent. So to make an extra $25 a month, which is $300 a year, you lost 2 months of rent. At you lost $3,400 thinking you can make an extra $300. Ludicrous. You want to make sure the property's perfect and make sure your price is perfect. It's the average of the neighborhood. Don't get greedy and go to the high end. Go average. What's the average in the neighborhood? The deal should work at that, or you shouldn't have bought it. Get the average rent in the neighborhood, get at least in 1 week, 2 weeks max. The next thing, this one's got 2 units vacant in one fourplex. And then her single families, her 15 houses, this is a competent investor too. 15 houses and a fourplex, and they cash flow $8,400 a month. That's their positive cash flow. Well done. Hind, I'm not sure how to say it. All right, the next question. The next door neighbor does not take care of his house, and my downstairs unit floods from the water on the next property. What's my recourse? If someone has built up their yard, the grounds, and it's forcing all the water over into your property, there is recourse for that, but it's going to take an attorney. That, or you got to spend the money to put in some drainage between the 2 units that is going to get it out, get the water out before it floods. But if it's flooding, it's going to be a lot cheaper than waiting for the next flood to get an attorney. Write a letter. That's almost always all it takes on attorney's letterhead. to level that, grade it, I think is what it's called. They literally take a tractor in there and with a thing on the back that grades the property, lowers it so that it doesn't flood your property. But they've got to do it. And if they won't do it, then take them to court. That's all going to be cheaper than waiting for it to flood again. So knock that out. If you need an attorney, email me. It's asksteve@getrealwealth.com. asksteve@getrealwealth.com. Okay, now, yesterday I talked negatively about Section 8 housing. I talked about how, if you have to carry a gun to collect your rents, I don't care how profitable it is. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. Sure, you feel safe with that gun, but what if somebody already has theirs out? I mean, it's insane to me. So when I was talking about Section 8 housing, and I got a few emails from people who have done well with Section 8 housing, the one thing they all had in common, none of them had their entire portfolio Section 8 housing. 25% was the max. And I'm leery of even having Section 8 housing in 25% of my units. I never let it go above 10%. So if I had 20 units, 2 of those units I would allow to go Section 8 housing. But I interviewed the people. And you're allowed to do this. A lot of people think, well, Section 8 housing, you can't turn people down. Yes, you can. I interviewed them. And one of the questions that I asked was, are your family members on Section 8 as well? And if they answered, yeah, my mom's on it and my grandma's on it, I'm not leasing to you. That is intergenerational. They're destroying your life by paying your rent. The government is destroying your life by paying your rent. Why go out and get a job? Why excel? Why achieve if your bills are paid? It's destroying people's lives. The cases where I do like Section 8 is when a girl who's a single mom says to me, I'm in college right now, I've got 2 more years, I'm on Section 8 housing till I get out of college and get a job. Guess what? Absolutely. Move in. The other case was a single mom. I can't remember her situation. She was working, but only part-time, and she was going to be moved to part-time to full-time in like a year. I let them in, and it worked out. But these intergenerational Section 8 people, their life is already destroyed, and you're not helping them, that's for sure. We'll talk more after the break. This is the GetRealWealth.com radio show. I'm your host, Steve Davis. You're listening to AM 700, the voice of Texas. Thanks for listening. Did you know that 95% of Americans fail to retire by age 65 and 36% are dead? The good news is that here at the GetRealWealth.com radio show, we know what the other 5% are doing. 70% of them own real estate. We are a mentoring group for new and experienced real estate investors. We will show you how to build a second stream of income that will allow you to retire at any age. I will be explaining this at a free 2-hour introductory workshop this month. If you would like to attend, please go to GetRealWealth.com. That's GetRealWealth.com. Welcome back to the GetRealWealth.com radio show. I'm your host, Steve Davis. We're answering emails. I'm also touching on some comments on Bigger Pockets. There's one major one that I'm going to address tomorrow. A very intelligent, well-meaning individual, I'm sure, wrote an article saying, don't buy real estate for cash flow. I'm sorry, it's hard to say that seriously. I have no idea what that means. It just shocked the daylights out of me. It's 8 pages long. So I will be studying that tonight, and we will address that issue on tomorrow's show. My first response is, that doesn't make a lick of sense to me. Then what reason do you buy it for? Appreciation? Equity buildup? Equity capture? the tax advantage, that's fine. But if it also has cash flow, you get all those plus cash flow. Why would you not? Here's what I think it is. The guy's from California. He's a realtor from California. And I bet you he's having trouble finding properties with cash flow. Therefore, he wrote an article that says don't buy property for cash flow, which, okay, I got no problem with that. If you're in California, maybe you can't. But to me, cash flow is the cake. Appreciation, equity buildup, equity capture, and the tax advantage, that's the icing on the cake. I'm not going to buy anything without cash flow. And we'll talk about that in detail tomorrow, because that'll probably take the whole show to address that blog post. Okay, the next thing I got was Italo Taylor Felix is the username on Instagram, has sent me a question. What does the elephant mean? Well, the meaning of the elephant in our logo really is primarily family. The secondary meanings behind it are responsibility, determination, loyalty, and patience. Let me say that again. Responsibility, determination, loyalty, oh, I left one out, legacy, forgot legacy, and patience. The elephant has always been my favorite animal. And when I was young, I was taught that about how they treat their family, how they take care of the young ones, but they also take care of the old ones, and that they pass on a legacy based on basically the love of each other. So when I chose the elephant, it was primarily because of family, secondarily responsibility, determination, loyalty, legacy, which is family, and patience. Why is family so important? Because for me, Real Wealth Academy is a tool for people to change their family tree. This I got from a very competent real estate investor named Natalie, who worked at my old company. She talked about it, and I when she first said it, I was like, family tree? What do you mean change your family tree? I thought the family tree was just the genetic portion. But the way she looks at it is it's also the financial portion, meaning poor people pass on poor behaviors and beliefs and strategies, which keeps their children poor, and they pass on poor beliefs and strategies to their children. See how it is really a family tree financially? We want to change that. When people enroll at Get Real Wealth Academy, they're not just enrolling themselves, their children are included, 18 and under, and we teach them these principles as well, with the hope that they don't suffer with the same fears and insecurities about money that we do. So family is the number one reason that I chose the elephant. Secondarily, just those characteristics of that animal. The responsibility to both the young and the old in the herd, the determination to survive, the loyalty to each other, the fact that they do pass on a legacy by taking care of both the old and the young, and of course, patience. They're generally calm and mellow creatures unless their young or herd is threatened. So that's why I chose it. And it just happens to be my favorite animal, so it worked out perfect for me. Okay, phone lines are open, 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. If you would like to join me, this is the final segment. So if you got a question, you need to call instantly. We've only got about 3 minutes left, I believe. 281-558-5738. All right, here's the... Oh, it's another question about Section 8 housing. Let me see if this is any different from the one I just answered. down that road. I feel like it's a great investment, though I'm not sure if I'm missing something here. Yeah, I guess to beat up Section 8 housing again, at one time I was part of a deal where we had 42 or 44 Section 8 units, and all of them were Section 8. Huge mistake. The tenants on Section 8, as a rule, are harder on the property than a regular tenant. And they would break windows, they would kick doors down. Because, I mean, in ours, I'm just going to tell you, they were straight up drug dealers. They destroyed the properties. And then you know what Section 8 did? They said, ooh, you've got a broken window, we're not going to pay you this month. Ooh, you've got a broken door, we're not going to pay you this month. I'd go, but your tenant kicked the door down. Your tenant broke the window. Not my problem. We're not paying you this month. And get that stuff fixed, or we're not paying you next month on this particular unit. So can you imagine you got 42 units and they don't pay you on 8 or 10 of them that month? Do you still have a mortgage? Do you still have taxes? Do you still have insurance? You've got to be careful with Section 8 housing. The big lie that people misunderstand is guaranteed payment. Yeah, you're guaranteed a payment if you meet all their criteria. And if a tenant breaks a window and they report it, you don't get paid. Guaranteed. So be very, very cautious. Section 8 housing is not what it's cracked up to be, in my opinion. It's supposed to be for single moms, single dads that need a boost, and they're not supposed to be on it for 5 years. They're supposed to be on Section 8 for a couple of years, and then they get their life straightened out and they start paying their own rent. See, it's a slick form of control. I like to use the word slavery. Take away a person's need to survive, and you control them. It's socialism. You control them. You control them. You manipulate them. They do what you say. I mean, what is that movie, The Hunger Games? There's socialism right there. It's garbage. Section 8 housing is, in my opinion, most of the time, garbage. But I'm glad it's there, because every once in a while, there's that single mom, that single dad, or someone who's been injured, or whatever the circumstance is, that truly warrants them being on Section 8 housing. But again, it's a couple of years to get on your feet, to be able to pay your own rent. When I see people that their grandmother was on Section 8, their mother was on Section 8, they're on Section 8, that's raping the system. Horrible. Just horrible. Section 8 is destroying those people's lives. Okay, buying a second multifamily is the next question. This one's from Bigger Pockets. If you're not familiar with Bigger Pockets, it is an online forum, a great place to ask questions and hear other people ask questions that you might not have thought of. It's pretty darn neat. It says, I currently own a 3-family, owned it for about 2 years, initially owner-occupied in a conventional loan. I have my eyes on another 3-family in the same town, but it's double the square footage and higher quality. My question, is there any issue purchasing a second 3-family property, and what's the best approach or investment path to take? Yeah, there's nothing special about that at all, Jeff. You're allowed 10 Fannie Mae loans, because that's still considered a single family. Remember, single family is 1 to 4 units. So you can buy the one you're living in and 9 more of those 3plexes, all with Fannie Mae loans. Once you get to 11, you switch to portfolio loans. So Jeff, no problem on that. Move forward, get that done, and get that cash flow. All right, this has been the GetRealWealth.com radio show. I'm your host, Steve Davis. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.
This has been the GetRealWealth.com radio show. Please remember that this show is for entertainment purposes only and should not be construed as legal, tax, or investing advice. Always get a professional opinion before making any investment decision. To find out about the mentoring and consulting at Real Wealth Academy, visit GetRealWealth.com and attend one of our free introductory workshops on real estate investing. That's GetRealWealth.com. Thanks for listening and have a great rest of your day.